Good afternoon again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we're going to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do the usual disclaimers. So, folks, as promised, we are going to be going over the bill that is currently on the New York State Senate floor. You're going to find the link to that, by the way, as always, in the description box. But I do want to take a moment. We have the media throwing and slamming people, trying to convince us that they are stunning and brave. Right? You want to know what stunning and brave looks like to me? Stunning and brave is Andre McCollins, who, after he was tortured by the JRC, after fighting, I got to guess it's one hell of a mental health battle, has battled back against his abusers with his mother beside him to become one of the biggest threats to the JRC that they have ever dealt with. This bill that he, his mother, and all of us advocates have been working on for years has the ability to bankrupt the JRC. This, folks, is stunning and brave. Someone who was tortured and brutalized, going toe-to-toe with the psychopaths that run the JRC, and fighting back so that nobody else has to go through what he did. If you want to know what stunning and brave looks like to us logical, rational folk, that's it. Right there. To the disclaimers. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much, they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Well, folks, NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read that article and share it on all your social media. Also included in there is NeuroClastic's public statement regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, folks, in case the JRC sees through with their threat. Also included in there is the Ozarks' first article in regards to the Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help boarding school situation, a so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has impending over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services, and they include the following: sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another a doctor who still lives on the premises with full access to the boys up on multiple, again, substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault with the boys there. You have an attorney general too busy basically chasing after the drag queens and trying and failing to defund public libraries to actually do his job, and you've got a governor. I don't know what to say about our governor. Send help. Please read that article, share it on all your social media. We have the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign as well, including the link to this Senate bill, Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, a clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002, the templates, and the ever-present self-explanatory Change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, folks, please use your headphones, alright? Alright, trigger warning, this channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously, parental supervision is advised, alright? Okay. Senate Bill S8935, also known as Andre's Law. Let's get into it, shall we? So here's the brief description. Prohibits the use of aversive conditioning and other certain punishments. It is sponsored by Senator Jabril Brisport. This is the current status. It is currently in committee at the moment. So let's view the actions, shall we? Right now, it's sitting at lowercase Senate actions, uppercase. It's committed to rules, advanced to third reading, second report call, first report call, referred to disabilities. Let's view the notes. Here we are. Not many have abstained. 5 ayes. Remember these names, folks. These are the people who are fighting for us at the risk of their own careers against a conglomerate who makes millions every year. Remember who they are. All right, here's our summary. Prohibits the use of aversive conditioning, which includes any procedure which causes obvious signs of physical pain, including but not limited to hitting, pinching, and electric shock. Prohibits the use of any procedures or punishment which denies a vulnerable person reasonable sleep, shelter, bedding, bathroom facilities, and any other aspect expected of a humane existence. Defines terms. Which is basically everything we've gone over, isn't it? Very logical and coherent. Glad something is. Title of Bill. An Act to amend Social Services Law in relation to prohibiting the use of aversive conditioning and other certain punishments. Here's the summary of the provisions. Section 1 adds a new Section 498 to the Social Services Law, providing that no programs funded or licensed by the state of New York shall administer to vulnerable persons any procedure that uses aversive conditioning. Section 2 modifies paragraph E of subdivision 1 of Section 488 of the Social Services Law to remove person-specific authorization for use of aversive conditioning and to clarify that aversive conditioning includes electric shock procedures. Section 3 adds a new subdivision 17 to Section 488 of the Social Services Law, defining program to include residential and non-residential public or private programs that provide services to vulnerable persons. Section 4 provides the effective date of this legislation. Justification. This legislation shall be known as Andre's Law, and it is intended to ensure that New York does not contribute to any more children being sent to out-of-state institutions that engage in aversive therapy practices that were used on Andre McCollins. There is a widespread agreement that the administration of electric shocks as aversive therapy is not appropriate for anyone, including children and persons with disabilities. The broad consensus opposing this use of electrical shocks includes the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the American Academy of Pediatrics, so-called for justice advocates. Remember how Dr. Matthew Israel just said, it's just people like me? Listen up, doctor. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Developmental Medicine and Dentistry, the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, the International Association for the Scientific Study of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, the National Association for the Dually Diagnosed, the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services, the National Association of State Directors of Special Education. Excuse me. In fact, Manfred Nowak, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, has bluntly stated that this is torture. Accordingly, this legislation seeks to end the practice whereby New York State spends millions of dollars sending its children to out-of-state facilities that engage in such practices. Simply put, the use of electric shocks for aversive conditioning is painful, psychologically damaging, and often physically harmful. Moreover, there is no justification for subjecting people to such unreasonable risk of injury, pain, and illness because safe and effective, less restrictive treatments are available and widely used. The FDA banned the use of electric shock devices as aversive therapy for both reasons, and both conclusions are consistent with the overwhelming weight of scientific literature on this topic and the actual treatment practices across the country. Indeed, the only remaining place in the country that still uses such devices, located in Massachusetts, expressly acknowledges that such devices are intended to be painful. The FDA has identified numerous studies that reveal physical harm resulting from such devices, as well as negative emotional reactions such as fear, avoidance, aversion, anxiety, depression, and appropriately sought to ban such practices. There are numerous examples of the harm resulting from these practices. For instance, one resident who had been subjected to such practices was tied to a restraint board for 7 hours and shocked 31 times after he did not take off his jacket when told to. The episode became public a decade later when video of this resident screaming, "Stop, stop, that hurts," while being repeatedly shocked surfaced during a lawsuit brought by his mother. This resident spent more than a month hospitalized after the incident, never returning to the center that had administered the electric shocks. Several other former residents who wore the device for years testified, sharing their negative experiences, with one stating, "Most of the times after getting shocked, I would get a very bad muscle cramp that would last me for 2 days. I would get burn marks on my skin. My experiences from the GED have affected me to this very day," said another. "I now suffer from a fear of authority, a fear of being controlled, and I panic when presented with either." Importantly, such practices are not necessary and are not recognized as medical best practices. The use of positive behavioral supports to address self-injurious or aggressive behaviors not only avoids the pain and other negative side effects described above, but is an effective treatment for people with self-injurious or aggressive behaviors, in spite of what Dr. Matthew Israel tries to tell you. Unlike electronic shocks, the use of positive behavioral supports is designed to produce durable, long-term improvement. Thank you! Accordingly, the use of positive behavioral supports has been adopted by disability service and special education systems and by doctors, clinicians, service providers, and educational professionals across the country. In fact, there is only one single remaining entity in the United States still employing electric shock devices. News outlets have reported that the vast majority of the children sent to the facility have been there from New York. This legislation is necessary because on July 6, 2021, the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit issued an opinion stating that, although no one disputes that the FDA has the ability to ban a device completely, the agency did not have the authority under 21 U.S.C. 360 to issue a ban on the use of the electric shock devices that was targeted at specific uses that the state regard as a legitimate medical practice. God. Chief Judge Shrisen dissented from this opinion, arguing that the FDA's undisputed power to ban a medical device altogether means that the agency can similarly exercise its banning authority in a more tailored fashion. It is notable that the divided court's opinion explicitly noted that this is an area which is traditionally the province of state law. Accordingly, this legislation will codify New York's agreement with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration assessment and the overwhelming weight of authority to cease such practices where New York's most vulnerable are concerned. Prior legislative history. We will go ahead and get into that in the next video, but this is pretty straightforward, folks. This is what we've been saying over the hundreds and hundreds of videos that we've been doing since that decision in 2021. This puts it in the black and white for you. It also disputes the claim that Dr. Matthew Israel has said repeatedly that nobody of report is actually standing against him. This makes it clear that quite literally everyone is standing against him. We're going to close on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.